everybody, and welcome. I'm Eric Rudin, and I have the pleasure of serving as co-chair of ADL New York, New Jersey's Real Estate Executive Council, alongside my friend Jeff Garrell. Hi, Jeff. Thank you so much for joining us tonight for this special celebration. And let me say that after the year and a half we've all had, it's great to see so many familiar faces and be back together in person. As many of you know, the Real Estate Division has played a critical role in advancing ADL's work fighting anti-Semitism and hate since it was founded in 1998 by two phenomenal visionary leaders, RESNICK and LITWIN. Over the past 2 decades, this division has helped shine a light on ADL's critical work throughout New York and New Jersey, and raised tens of millions of dollars in support of the organization's regional programming and presence. We are extremely grateful to each and every one of you for the role you played in making that success possible. With your help and partnership, we've united leaders across our industry in pursuit of securing justice and fair treatment for all. Together, we have demonstrated that the real estate community is committed to denouncing all forms of bias and bigotry, and proudly stands with ADL on the frontiers in the fight against hate. Tonight, I would like to recognize 2 key leaders from our Real Estate Executive Council. One is Carol Pittleman, who unfortunately couldn't be here, who represents her late father, Lenny, and the LITWIN family, who are represented tonight by Gary Jacob. Gary, thank you very much for being here. The other is Jonathan Resnick, who is here with us on behalf of his late father, Bert, and the Resnick family. Jonathan, where are you? On behalf of ADL and the Council, thank you both for helping us continue Bert and Lenny's extraordinary work and legacy. We are extremely grateful for your ongoing partnership and support. Thank you very much. Tonight, we proudly pay tribute to your fathers as we recognize our 2021 Burton P. Resnick and Leonard LITWIN Legacy Award recipient. Each year, we present this award to a member of the real estate community who has exemplified the personal values Bert and Lenny demonstrated, and a commitment to fighting anti-Semitism, support for equality and justice, and a vision for a world without hate. Our 2021 recipient, Karen Gould, is a dedicated ADL advocate who embodies each of those values and has demonstrated remarkable leadership under our Executive Council and as part of ADL New York, New Jersey's Advisory Board. Karen, we are proud to recognize you with this honor and look forward to hearing from you later this evening. Where's Karen? It is now my pleasure to turn the program over to my co-chair, Jeff Garrell.
Thank you, Eric. It's great to be here, celebrating with so many good friends and supporting an organization that is doing such critical work. I think we all recognize what's happening in the world. So being here today is critical. And I'm glad it turned out to be a beautiful day. So it's a nice place to come. It's safe. You can all see friends. Karen, you don't know this, but the first place I went to for a job was Turner Construction, and they turned me down quickly. It forced me to drive across country to California to look for a job. It worked out okay. Anyway, but it's a great company. Obviously, they didn't hire me, so that helped. I'd just like to thank the members of the Executive Council and recognize those members who are here tonight. Hunter Berman, Scott Gowan, Karen Gould, Scott Handler, Gary Jacobs again, Minnie Lieberson, Lisa Mallon, Joanne Podell, Jonathan Resnick, and Dina Silverstein. Thankful for your commitment and support. You're going to hear from ADL's regional and national leadership, as well as a long-standing ADL partner, Thomas Galati of the NYPD Intelligence Bureau, who knows more about what's going on in the city and the country than anyone. We appreciate Chief Galati's participation, and we all thank the department for keeping our city safe. It's now my pleasure to introduce ADL New York, New Jersey's Regional Director, Scott Richmond. Scott has been in his position for just over a year, joining ADL after more than a decade at the American Jewish Committee. He started as an investment banker and then a human rights lawyer before devoting his career to nonprofit work in the Jewish community for over 25 years. He's held a number of other positions, including 10 years with JDC, helping the Jews of the former Soviet Union. And he brings all of this experience to ADL, and I'm pleased to welcome him here tonight to share more about what his team is seeing and responding to in their day-to-day work. Scott?
Thanks so much, Jeff, for that introduction, and huge thanks to you and Eric and the wonderful Real Estate Executive Council that you both chair for getting us to this moment. If I were in synagogue, I think I would say, Shechianu, let's take a moment to recognize what's happening here. If this were 2019 and we were in a beautiful venue, we would be really ho-hum and blasé about it, but this is really an extraordinary achievement, and especially so for the real estate industry, which has fought so hard to bring us all back. It's a testament to the determination of these incredible volunteers, but also a testament to my extraordinary staff. Together they thought of every detail, all the Purell, all the masks, everything, every little detail. And when I mention staff, I'm talking principally about the amazing ADL New York, New Jersey development staff who make the magic happen. Huge thanks to all of them. Now I'm looking at them, especially to Jennifer Wang, Indira Landano, and of course, ADL New York, New Jersey Development Director, Aaron Kuchar, who leads this great team and works so hard. This was a massive effort to get us here. Truly outstanding work. And just so we understand how exceptional a moment this is, I have now been director of ADL New York, New Jersey for a year, and this is the first time that I've met Aaron, the first time I've met Jennifer, the first time I've met Indira in person. Really hard to believe. And what a tumultuous year it's been for ADL and the country. I know that our next speaker, Fred Block, will say a few words about ADL's national work, but I want to give you a taste of what that looks like at the local level. I'm going to give you 3 examples. First of all, this spring we saw a horrific wave of hate against the Asian community, which unfortunately continues. As an organization dedicated to fighting hate against all, I found myself on panels and at rallies, railing against the uptick against Asians and offering practical steps that we can take to stem this. We played a role and continue to play a role in working with our Asian partners to help them understand how to respond to hate. There is no ADL in the Asian community, and unfortunately ADL has too much experience in fighting hate and bias and bigotry. Through all of this though, the anti-Semitism never stopped, coming especially the wave after the Israel-Hamas conflict in May. As a person coming from the outside, I must say that I was simply shocked by the number of anti-Semitic incidents that literally happen every day in New York City and in New Jersey and in the state. They largely go unreported, but they're there. An astonishing 30 incidents a week are reported to our office, including the latest last night, with a guy driving by in Brooklyn with a BB gun shooting at a yeshiva student. You don't know about these things, but they're out there. If you do the math, you'll quickly come to 1,600 incidents a year. more than any other ADL office by far. Each incident has to be investigated and responded to in some way. That's the work of my staff. It's the day-to-day work of that office, of our office. And frankly, it's what drew me to ADL. This type of in-the-trenches work is rarely found and makes an enormous difference both to individuals and to society as a whole. But ADL is not only about being reactive to the issues of the day, we're also proactive. And that is what gives me hope for the future. And here I want to point to the New York, New Jersey region's extraordinary anti-bias and anti-bullying work in hundreds of elementary schools, middle schools, and high schools, impacting hundreds of thousands of students just in New York and New Jersey. They join more than 1 million students across the country working with ADL each year. No matter where you go in upstate New York, Central New Jersey, Long Island, Manhattan, Westchester, schools work closely with ADL, with our education staff, and this year has just begun, and we have generated more interest in those programs than any other year. It's a record-setting year. We will likely hit 300 schools just in New York and New Jersey this year, which to me says something about the particular moment we're in terms of the need to fight hate, the need to fight bias and bullying. If you want to hear more, you can tune in to my weekly podcast. I have a national podcast called From the Front Lines. You can just search for it. I started it this May. Thank you. It focuses on one aspect of ADL's work each week. So it's been a busy year. But this work does not happen without the extraordinary generosity of our donors. The many people tonight who partnered with ADL by giving generously to fight anti-Semitism and hate. One amazing example of this is Karen Gould, a true leader in the fight against anti-Semitism and hate, and a person I've so enjoyed getting to know. Through Karen, I also met Peter Dvorin, the CEO and president of Turner Construction, and learned the lead role that he and Turner are playing in improving diversity and inclusion in the construction industry. Thank you to Turner for being a visionary sponsor of this evening's program. I'm also so glad to welcome such a large group from Turner this evening. We'll hear more about that later. I just want to congratulate you and Karen and applaud you and Peter and Turner Construction for all you do. We at ADL see this as the beginning and very much look forward to continuing to work and grow and develop our partnership with Turner. Before I conclude, I just want to give a shout out and a thank you for a few of my good friends who've attended this evening. Acting Israeli Consul General in New York, Israel Nitzan, and Rabbi Joseph Katasnik, the Executive Vice President of the New York Board of Rabbis. And my new friends, Consul General of Mexico in New York, Jorge Islas, and Consul General of Panama in New York, Elias Levy. Thank you all so much for coming this evening and for making this very special event such a success. And now, I have the great honor to introduce Fred Block, ADL Senior Vice President for Growth. Fred was one of ADL CEO Jonathan Greenblatt's first executive hires, and for the past 5 years, he has been responsible for leading the network of 25 regional offices and directing and overseeing all of ADL's fundraising nationwide, which has just about doubled since Fred and Jonathan came on board. Fred is also deeply involved in creating and implementing ADL's policy and program priorities as a member of ADL's executive team, but perhaps most meaningful of all to me is that Fred is the person who asked me to join ADL. Please turn your attention to my boss, my mentor, and my friend, Fred Block.
Boy, are we glad you said yes, Scott. Scott Richmond's done a great job, and let's just hear it for Scott and what he's been doing. Joining ADL and doing it all virtual until just this very moment. So thank you and good evening, everybody. Wow, this is an in-person event. I'm actually not sure how I'm supposed to behave. I really haven't done much of this lately, and it's super nice to see all of you in 3 dimensions, rather than just a face in a Hollywood square in a Zoom call. So it's very exciting for me. And I bring greetings today from my boss, Jonathan Greenblatt, who's in Europe right now representing ADL on some very important meetings. And I got to talk to Jonathan right before I came over here, and he wanted to make sure that I conveyed to all of you his hearty thanks for being here, for showing up, for standing up and being counted, and obviously for your long-standing support for ADL and our very important work. So that's directly from Jonathan about an hour ago. We were together last time, virtually, about a year ago on October 29th. And if you're anything like me, you found that the sense of time, what happened when during this whole lockdown, is kind of crazy. You don't really remember things the way we used to, given working at home and altered schedules. So to complement Scott's excellent recap of what happened in New York, New Jersey, let me remind you of some of what's happened nationally and globally at ADL since we last gathered, at that time virtually. In a nutshell, a lot. Exactly 5 days after we met was Election Day. You might remember that. We were super thankful that at that time there was no violence or serious attempts to upset the vote on Election Day, as our Center on Extremism was closely monitoring individuals and groups to see if that would happen. But then came January 6th. Sadly, this did not come as a complete shock to our experts, who had been sounding the alarm for weeks ahead of the Stop the Steal rally. And then it happened. And while most of us were glued to our TVs, horrified by the attack on the Capitol, ADL's investigative researchers were monitoring in real time all they could on national broadcasts and in touch with law enforcement also in real time, noting the people that they recognized from years and years of research and looking at extremists who happened to be showing up on some of those news feeds. That clearly was ADL in action. And since then, much of ADL's work has been focused on the fallout from that January 6th attack. We've been actively engaged with the Biden administration and Congress on steps that they can take to better tackle domestic extremism and domestic terrorism. This includes testifying before lawmakers on Capitol Hill and submitting to the administration a PROTECT plan, that's an acronym, which provides a comprehensive set of recommendations and actions to address what we see and many others see as a real threat to our country. And if you look at the Biden administration plan, which is called a National Strategy for Countering Domestic Terrorism, you'll find ADL language all over that document. This also is ADL in action. And ADL in action will be shown again actually tomorrow morning when the House Veterans Affairs Committee holds a hearing, and this one's entitled Violent Domestic Extremist Groups and the Recruitment of Veterans. And who do they ask to testify? None other than the VP of our Center on Extremism, Oren Siegel, who in the past has spoken before this group. And then, as Scott mentioned, last spring we saw this disturbing series of anti-Semitic incidents following the outbreak of the fighting between Israel and Hamas. And we tracked nationwide a 75% year-over-year increase during the 2 weeks of the conflict. And as we regularly do, we cast a bright light on the anti-Semitism that is so prevalent in the anti-Zionist movement. At ADL, we believe that sunlight is the best disinfectant in fighting hate, regardless of where that hate comes from the right, the left, or otherwise. We have to shine a bright light. This too is ADL in action. And then very early tomorrow morning, around 5 a.m. our time, way over in Sweden, Jonathan Greenblatt will keynote the Malmo International Forum on Holocaust Remembrance and Combating Anti-Semitism, a very big and important conference. And despite the difficulties of traveling during COVID, Jonathan and our International Affairs SVP, Sharon Nazarian, thought it was essential that ADL be represented at this gathering to share ADL's experiences and expertise and to support the global efforts to fight anti-Semitism. And what I've outlined here just really scratches the surface of ADL's efforts since we met virtually a year ago. But I'd be remiss if I didn't mention that absolutely none of this work could happen without your continued support. We know that the pandemic has had a tremendous impact on our society and on you financially and emotionally. So a hearty thank you from all of us at ADL to all of you who have stood with us and have supported us through this time. While much of the world was forced to come to a grinding halt at the onset of the pandemic, ADL kept churning. Hate and anti-Semitism did not rest while COVID spread, and therefore our work never stopped. Whether it be remotely or on the ground at safe social distance, of course, ADL's century-old mission to stop the defamation of the Jewish people and secure justice and fair treatment to all continues. And it's with your continued support that we get up every morning and together fight the good fight for the benefit of this community and communities around the world. So thank you. And now I'm pleased to welcome my friend and colleague, ADL's Vice President of Law Enforcement and Analysis, Greg Erie. In his role, Greg leads enhanced efforts to further partnerships and engagement with federal, state, and local law enforcement all across the country. Greg is a 29-year veteran of government service. He spent 2 decades with the FBI, served as special agent in charge of the Newark field office, supervisor of New York's Office of Domestic Terrorism Squad, and later as section chief of the FBI's Domestic Terrorism Operations Section. Clearly an important person to have on the ADL team. He also has extensive international experience, completing a year-long assignment in Israel and serving as an acting legal attaché in Algeria. Greg's a great addition to the ADL team. Please welcome my friend and partner, Greg Erie. Thank you.
I'm going to be very brief in my remarks because I want to get to our illustrious and a good friend of our guest speaker. But I have to stop and echo what both Scott and Fred had said. When I left the Bureau, it was 18 months ago. This is the first in-person event I've done for the ADL, and I've met many of you on Zooms, and you're all much taller than you look. People asked me when I left the Bureau, ADL, it didn't seem to make a lot of sense, and as Fred and Jonathan have said to me, they said I could use this. An Irish kid from the Bronx who went to the FBI, how does that travel back to the ADL? And to me, it wasn't a problem. It was something that made perfect sense to me. Here's a century-old organization that's still trying to do good. I left the FBI. It helps that it has 3 letters in it because I can keep T-shirts moving. But it's another organization I spent my life protecting people and helping people. And I have not been disappointed. It's been a strange time during the pandemic, but it really did help me to learn the ADL much more quickly than I think I could have in person. I've met people from California. We feel like we know each other. So we continue that on today. And when people say a civil rights organization, you're a law enforcement person, how does that work? Is that a contradiction? I always bring up to them, and I had to look this up, the great civil rights activist Dorothy Height said decades ago, there is no contradiction between effective and appropriate law enforcement and respect for civil rights and liberties. Decades ago. That's what we're doing today. Before I introduce, I want to go over to my ROE here. That's the rules of engagement. Tom's going to give some comments. I'll come up with some guided questions, and then we'll open it up to the audience. But without further ado, please let me read the bio, and I'm going to try to do this without my glasses because somebody said I look old when I put them on. Chief Tom Galati, a member of the NYPD since 1984, is the first to serve as the Chief of Intelligence for the New York City Police Department. Prior to becoming the head of the Intelligence Bureau, he served in a variety of roles throughout the Patrol Services Bureau, the Detective Bureau, and the Intelligence Bureau. Chief Galati holds a bachelor's degree in criminal justice from the State University of New York. He is a 2003 graduate of Columbia University's Police Management Institute and is a 2011 graduate of the Harvard University John F. Kennedy School of Government. Throughout Chief Galati's career, he received recognition from the NYPD on numerous occasions, most notably with the Medal of Valor in 1989. Additionally, he has been honored by several foreign police agencies, including the Green Cross from Spain's Guardia Civil and the Conspicuous Service Medal from the Australian Federal Police. Chief Galati was recognized by the Anti-Defamation League in 2011 as the recipient of the William and Naomi Gorowitz Institute Service Award, saluting his outstanding achievements in combating terrorism, extremism, and injustice. That was the prepared remarks, but I do want to, in less than 10 seconds, say, Tom and I have known each other for well over a decade. We've worked together. He is internationally and nationally known and respected, and you will not find a more professional or innovative police executive anywhere. With that, I give you Tom GALATI.
Thank you, Greg. I just want to start by, really thanking the Real Estate Executive Council for having me here today. I want to congratulate the Honorary Karen Gould from Turner, Senior Vice President, Mr. Block, and Greg, who, again, we go back many years. Greg and us worked on some pretty intense cases over the years in New York. So a great partnership, and I continue that partnership with him here at ADL. And then again, the Regional Director, Scott Richmond, who I finally met. I know he's here for a year. I usually know who the Regional Director is, but I've met them before, but with COVID, things changed. So just a little bit about me. I came on the department in 1984, so I have 37 plus years in the department. And I am the first Chief of Intelligence because this role really grew after 9/11. The Intelligence Bureau got bigger, and then division, and then it eventually became a bureau. So I'm the first serving one, and it's a job I love. I hope I am doing this for a while, but we can never tell what might happen. But anyway, I thought what I would do tonight, really, one is just tell you a little bit about where we are today. I know this is the Real Estate Council. I know that everybody here is really concerned about the state of the city. So how did we get here? And that's the question. And where are we going? So I just want to begin by saying that we are starting to make really, really good strides to get things back to where they were. 2019 in December, everybody was having a great time. I think the city was at historic lows of crime. Tourism was as high as it could be. And then there were some events that happened in 2020. I think 2020 is just a perfect storm of all these events coming together in one year that kind of set us back a little bit. And when I say set us back, but we are going forward and we are getting things back together. So we started right in the beginning of January of 2020, and the first thing that really affected, I would say, quality of life in New York City was the bail reform law. So the bail reform law was that there's no longer any, judges can't put people in jail if they feel they're a threat if they commit certain crimes. You have to commit a violent crime, which started to become problematic for us because we started seeing people that were doing things that are, maybe minor crimes, but yet they are very nuisance crimes to a lot of people. Breaking windows, breaking into cars, but people would get arrested and they'd be arrested. They'd be released right away. Even certain burglaries were not eligible for bail. So in order to be held on bail, you either had to be a violent felon that did, a robbery, a violent robbery, maybe with a gun, or some other crime, obviously murder or something like that. So what we started to see more and more people getting arrested, but they were released right away. And they would go out again, they commit the same crime, and they were released right away. We had one individual who walked into a bank 5 times with a note. 5 times. Every time he was arrested, he was released right away. After the 5th time, we were able to put that person in a mental hospital because that's where he needed. But a robbery with a note is not a violent crime, yet he was released. And we started seeing this with burglaries, commercial burglaries. They're not violent, nobody's in the place. And burglars were coming out, and they're doing burglary after burglary after burglary, and we started to see we were having a problem with that. So with that, also we had justice reform. And justice reform meant that there was a rush, I don't want to say rush, we had a certain amount of time that we had to get all the materials we had. In other words, from the time that the person was arrested to the time the person would go to trial, every piece of bizarro evidence we had to be in the hands of the defense attorney, which was very challenging to a lot of the district attorneys. And I think a lot of the district attorneys, they started saying, well, let's defer this prosecution until we can get everything ready. So we started to see that the DA's offices started to defer prosecutions rather than keep people in jail. So we have bail reform, we have justice reform, and we started to see a little bit of a spike in crime. Bail reform has gotten adjusted a little bit, and justice reform got adjusted a little bit. I think there's still a lot more room to get it better. But what happens after that? And that's COVID. And COVID hit everybody really, really hard. So you can imagine, in March and April, the city was basically empty, So that also gave people the opportunity to do burglaries and things when nobody's around. The shelters were always closed, and unfortunately, homeless people had to leave the shelters, so they were put in a lot of the hotels right in this general area, and that became problematic because although being homeless is it's very unfortunate for people, but it also associated with a lot of mental illness, and a lot of the mental illness that's associated with that kind of resulted in some of these horrific crimes that we see, especially in the subways, people pushing into trains and so on and so forth. So as we started dealing with COVID, the NYPD was hit very hard. There are 53,000 person organizations. To give you an idea how hard it hit us, almost 12,000 people were infected with COVID. So we were operating probably a little less than 2/3 of what our force was, because we had so many people out because of special conditions and so many people that were infected with COVID. At the same time, we were losing people. We lost 62 people that died between civilians and detectives to COVID. And why is that? Because when everybody else was working from home, we were coming in every day. We were working in very tight quarters. And I work in the intelligence bureau. I have about 4 locations, and we'd get somebody with COVID, and next thing you know, I had 20 people out with COVID. I lost one that worked for me personally. I had several officers that brought COVID home, and their parents died as a result of COVID. So it was a very difficult time with COVID dealing with it. And as I'm sure everybody here has their own COVID stories. But just as we were starting to come out of COVID, another very horrific thing happened. And this is 2020, and this is this storm I keep talking about, the perfect storm. And that's the horrific actions of what happened with George Floyd. I think everybody has seen that video. Anybody that's seen that video says it's the most horrific thing you've ever seen. There's not a law enforcement person in this country or the world that can ever say that that was justified. It's not. But the results of that had implications throughout the country. Not just in Minneapolis, but in LA, in Las Vegas, in New York especially. So we started to see some protest activity, it happened first in Minneapolis, and then the looting started in Minneapolis, and we started seeing small groups gather, and before we knew it, we were getting groups of, 10,000 at Union Square, maybe 5,000 at Union Square, 5,000 at Washington Square, 10,000 at Barclays Center, huge crowds. And everybody says to me, you're the biggest police department, how could you not be able to handle that? And I'm going to explain how. I've been on the job for many years, and I've been to the Crown Heights riots, I've been to the Tompkins Square riots, I've been to the Washington Heights riots, I've been to the RNC where we were having huge demonstrations with thousands, hundreds of thousands of people, and we always seem to get through that. But this was Washington Square, Tompkins Square, this was Washington Heights, this was Crown Heights, and this was the RNC, all going on simultaneously. We were dealing with, 100,000 protesters in maybe 10 different locations. And as the protests grew, and many of you from the real estate world, we started seeing the looting coming in. And it took us a couple of days, but we did get it under control. It's an unfortunate thing that happened in a city that we think is so safe, and we do rely on the police. But we worked very hard to try and get that under control. I think the curfew helped us a lot, and once we were able to get it under control and get all our people into position, develop a good plan, we were able to stop it. I think that one of the things that's really important, because many of you are from the real estate world, I deal with your security directors all the time. Whether it's Rudin, or it's Related, or it's Venado, or it's Fisher Brothers, I deal with those security directors all the time. And we started having calls with all the security directors, on a weekly basis, or when there were big events coming up, and telling them what we're seeing. We have to give you the intel. We want you to know. And we were doing that going forward. So, we're dealing with all of these situations, and we finally, we're still dealing with some of the protests, but they really died down a lot. And I think we have a good handle on it, And now, it's 2021, and luckily, we got through, I think, the worst year in New York City history, or probably this country's history for that fact. And, we walked right into another very situation, for New York City, which to me personally is very troubling, is the 9/11 anniversary, 20 years. So 20 years of 9/11, an incredible moment in time, I think. I, in the Intelligence Bureau, Greg, for so many years, we've been working on terrorism forever. We've been working on, extremist terrorism coming from overseas. We've been dealing with, people that are inspired by ISIS, that are inspired by Al-Qaeda, with their propaganda online. And I didn't say it, but Oren Siegel does a great job in the Center on Extremism. We deal with him all the time, and we share information with him all the time. And he sends us stuff, and we'll send him stuff. So dealing with the 20th anniversary, we've seen a lot of propaganda, bringing back a lot of bad feelings for a lot of people here. And the reason why I do bring that out is because 9/11 really has not stopped for us in the NYPD and for a lot of agencies. So on that day, we lost 23. The fire department lost well over 300. The Port Authority lost 37. But the real effect we're feeling right now is the people that are dying from cancer. In August of this year, I went to a funeral for a sergeant that worked for me. He died of cancer. He was the 275th person that died of cancer as a result of 9/11. And I have to tell you that that number has actually gone up now. I think we're at 290 people that have died of cancer. The fire department, 255 people have died of cancer. And I can't even tell you how many officers that I've worked with over the years that have cancer that, thank God, have not died. So the result of 9/11 is still coming. I have to say that, I think that we've done a good job since 9/11, really protecting the city and the country. I think our federal partners have done a great job. But don't forget, we've had 5 attacks here in New York City. We've had a truck attack on the West Side Highway. We had a bombing on 23rd Street. We had a suicide bombing in the subway. This is something that has not gone away. But at the same time, we're facing something else. We're facing the white supremacists. We're facing the groups like Anti-Semitism. We're facing these groups that are bringing back all these bad feelings of hate that that I don't think that we've seen in 20 years. The January 6th insurrection. That's something that we're focused on very much, and I'm going to stop because I know that we got to ask questions and we're on a hard deadline. But we have a unit called REMV, Racially Ethically Motivated Violent Extremists, and we've been doing this since 2019, just focusing on those groups. I won't get into specifics, but we are not just New York City. We are doing investigations around the country, working very closely with the FBI on all of these groups, Anti-Semitism, the base, and so on. With that, I know I probably went on longer than I can. I'm going to turn it over to Greg.
I'm not allowed to play favorites, but as a native New Yorker, I'm eternally grateful for the service that both you and all of the NYPD do to keep us safe. And these are the prepared questions, and then we'll take a couple from the audience. But you mentioned during your remarks, as we're seeing somewhat of a growing violent crime rate in the city and certainly across the country, and some of the depleting effects that the pandemic and other issues have had on the NYPD. As we return to some degree of normalcy from the pandemic, can you give us an idea about how the PD is preparing for that? More people coming in the streets and dealing with some of these losses you talked about.
So one of the things that I think is very important, I'm going to talk really about Midtown Manhattan right now, because I think that this is the economic hub of New York City. Not to say that the suburbs aren't important, because they are very important, because that's where most of the people that work in New York City live. But New York City, people from all around the world want to come here. This is the tourism capital, this is the media capital, and we have to make sure that Manhattan is back to where it is. And I think, as I mentioned earlier, when the shelters closed and we put a lot of people up in the shelters, that really put everybody right in the center of Manhattan. And that caused a lot of these horrific things that everybody has seen online. And again, I'm not saying, I understand completely homelessness. I think, we have to take care of people that are homeless. We have to give them appropriate shelter and stuff. But there's also mental illness that goes in there. And I think now that the hotels are opening, it's very important for us to try and address that homeless problem. The issue that's coming up is that, City Council passed laws and makes it more restrictive. We used to have a unit called Homeless Outreach that we used to go and engage, and that's not in effect anymore. So now there's a process involved, and it involves the Department of Home Services to go out, make an assessment. If the person is like in a camping or something, then they can go out and they can call them and move them. But that's a time process that I think that has restricted a lot of what we can do. But we are doing it more and more now. Right in this area, we have an increased detail in Times Square. We also have a 100-man unit that is working the corridors all around Penn Station, Grand Central Station. We want all the people that are coming back to work to feel safe. We want them to feel safe. And that's going to be increased police patrols, getting the people on the street that need help getting them to appropriate locations, getting the shelters back up, and getting our tourist industry back. So that's one of the big things that we're trying to do now. We're trying to correct the problems that COVID kind of caused. And I think that it's starting to look better in my opinion.
Thank you. And I know from past experience with you how important partnerships are to you, especially in your capacity of running the Intel shop for the NYPD. With us tonight are very prominent members of the real estate community. What do they need to do to partner with you, with the Intel, with the NYPD, with the Intel Bureau, to make things safer with this crime rate moving up?
Well, we have plenty of programs that I know that all of the security directors are aware of. The SHIELD program, where we put out, bulletins all the time. The SHIELD program. But I think, especially in this time of COVID and then going into the George Floyd stuff, the real estate security community really came together. And there's a lot of different groups. There's some people out there, Kevin Fitzgerald, Chris White, they have these groups of security directors, and what they do is they call us and they ask me and my XL John Park to get online and talk to them about what's happening. Whether it's, I think the last one we did was on maybe, I think it was a post-insurrection that everybody was worried about. We did it for some of the big events like the Breonna Taylor anniversary of her death and George Floyd. And we try and tell them what we're seeing and what to expect. And we don't tell them that you should board up or not board up. I think that's their personal decision. But we'll give them what we're seeing and what we see online. And just like Oren does, we are very much online. We're talking to a lot of people, in every spectrum of terrorism, every spectrum of criminality, and trying to get a feel for what we do. I think I encourage everybody, and I'm sure you want them back in your buildings, to open up, get people back here. I think that's going to help us. I think the more people that are on the street, the quicker we're going to get back to normal. The Delta variant, unfortunately, a lot of people, a lot of my friends that have buildings, and have said that, we would just start to get everybody back, and then Delta variant, and we went back to it. The sooner we get back to normal, I think the sooner that everything is going to get normal. The one thing I will say, besides the SHIELD and us reaching out, we also have a unit that goes out and visits different industries, whether it's the hotel industry, in the entertainment industry, and we're working with them, we're giving them presentations, we're feeding them information constantly, so that they can be aware of everything that's going on. And the last thing is, and I know everybody sees it, and it's like a cliche, but if you see something, say something. A lot of great information comes out. A lot of great information comes out. If somebody that has somebody in their building and they just don't feel comfortable about that, and you call that in either through the security director or through the 188 Safe City hotline, it really is generating a lot of leads that not only go to us, they go to the FBI too, and it's good to have both agencies look at it.
With that, I think we have time for just a few questions from the audience. If you have a question, just raise your hand. We have a roving microphone.
Oh, I'm sorry. Could you tell me how the police is able, if they can, to keep illegal guns out of New York? I read in the newspapers that young people feel they have to have a gun, and yet they seem to be able to get them. Is there any way you can stop the supply from coming in?
So that's a great question, and that has so many things I could go into. First thing I will say is that, again, I'm going to go back to COVID, and then I'm going to go back to the effects of George Floyd. So what we've seen in 2020 when COVID happened, I think people got afraid, I mean, there was times you couldn't buy paper towels, and then people started saying, well, what if I can't buy food? So gun sales in the United States in 2020 were up, and this is not necessarily sales, but the FBI does a check for anybody that's going to buy a gun. were up 40% higher than any other year, which means 40% more guns were bought in 20 than 19. In addition to that, straw purchases, or what we like to call straw purchases, multiple gun sales, somebody going in buying 2 or 3 guns at a time, that was up 30% higher. So a lot more guns hit the street. And although some legal gun buyers were, the straw purchases and such are illegal people. Now, it used to be that you could see a gun purchase, straw purchase, and then maybe 10 years later, that gun would be used in a crime. We're seeing guns that are purchased, 4 out of Georgia, and 3 are recovered in a crime scene within 1 year. That's unheard of. That means there's too many guns up here. It's the Second Amendment. Each state has different laws. Some of the states changed their laws. I think Virginia now, you can only buy like 1 gun a week or a month. I'm not sure exactly what it was. But that slowed down the flow out of Virginia. Virginia used to be the #1 state that used to send guns to us. Now it's Georgia. More guns are coming from Georgia. They have the largest gun dealerships down there, and they're selling millions of guns. But they're doing it legally. So with the increased guns being out there, and then I also have to say that I think that a lot of the COVID funding and money that's been out there has really fueled purchasing of the guns. So what are we doing about it? I can tell you what the problem is and how it happened. What are we doing about it? We have a program right now where we just started in Intel that we have the ATF working with us. We're getting traces on guns that are going back, used to take us 3-4 months to get. We're getting them back in 24 hours. We're being able to get a gun and go to the DA and say that gun was used in 3 other crimes. And we have a room where we have the ATF there, we have the FBI there, we have many parts of the NYPD there. But we also have the prosecutors, so we have the DAs from each one. And we sit there and we say, this guy's been arrested 3 times for a gun and he keeps getting released. We have to keep this person in. And they're going to say, well, we need this, we need the gun trace, we need this, we need the DNA back, we need social media for him, we need the arrest that he had in California. And I think a lot of that was lacking at one point. So people were getting arrested 24 hours going before a judge, and they're like, okay, let him go. But they didn't know about the 4 other arrests that he had, maybe in California or somewhere else. That's helping us. Our gun remanding people in jail right now is going up right now, and it's because of that program. Unfortunately, I do see a lot more children involved. That is unfortunate. I think that I could call it gang, but I think I would rather call it crews that are existing today. There's a lot of things going on where people are fighting online, and then that online fighting, a lot has related to like rap music, and then the violence ends up in the street. So we're working very closely with the courts to try and curb that, trying to keep the real bad people in. Also the age went up from 16 to 18 now, so juveniles now 17, whereas they could be an adult before justice reform.
Chief, I know we can keep you here all night. No, I know we can keep you here all night, but the rest of the program we'll move on with. But personally, again, thank you for coming here tonight and for your service.
Everybody has a question on the side.
The chief will be hanging around if anything else.
Thank you, Chief Galati and Greg, for that excellent presentation. And Chief, thank you so much for everything you do for all New Yorkers every day and every year. It's greatly appreciated. Thank you. It is now my pleasure to introduce Peter Daffron. Peter serves as the President and Chief Executive Officer of Turner Construction. Through Peter's leadership, the company works hard to create an environment where people actively care for others. When you enter a Turner site, you can see people are treated with respect and dignity. They have a sense of belonging and truly believe they are contributing to building something extraordinary. reflecting the company's focus on diversity, equity, and inclusion in the workplace. Turner is widely recognized as a great place to work. And as I guess we all know, that kind of corps d'esprit starts at the top and works its way down. Peter is also committed to supporting the communities where Turner does business and works extremely hard to improve the economic viability of underrepresented business enterprises through the projects the company builds. On a personal note, my father, Jack Rudin, was a big fan of Peter's, and so am I. There is no construction CEO who I know with more integrity and commitment to do what's right than Peter Davern. Please join me in welcoming Peter, who will introduce ADL's 2021 recipient of the Burton P. Resnick and Leonard Litwin Legacy Award, Karen Gould.
Thank you, Eric. Thank you very much. Bear with me. And Jeff, it's never too late. If you and I meet at 9 o'clock tomorrow morning remotely, you'll have a job by 12. We apologize for that. Good evening, everyone. It's truly an honor to be here. I'd like to give a special thanks to Indira for helping us organize this event and our participation. And thank you, Scott and Alex, for their leadership of the ADL and their partnership and support of Turner. It is also wonderful to be here as we recognize a true leader and a dear friend of mine, Karen Gould. I'm so happy to present Karen as this year's recipient of the ADL's Burton P. Resnick and Leonard Litwin Legacy Award. Karen embodies our commitment to creating a culture of active caring. She is a role model and demonstrates the highest standard for care of others. Karen is extremely proactive in promoting diversity, equity, and inclusion. She served as our vital connection with the ADL as we established strict protocols to combat hate and bias in the construction industry. She was instrumental in developing standards for how we respond to bias events and how we support those impacted by hate. She helped us turn those events into learning opportunities. Karen spearheaded efforts to take action against injustice and enforce our zero tolerance for hate, bigotry, discrimination, harassment, bias, and intimidation. Along the way, Karen brought in the ADL to work with our teams on how to appropriately respond to these incidents in a way that held people accountable and used education and training as the primary method for change, not by being punitive, but teaching. Karen has been instrumental in leading diversity, equity, and inclusion, our efforts at Turner. Karen brought in the resources we needed from the Center of Extremism to help our leadership team measure security risks and protect our people. Most recently, Karen introduced resources from the ADL's education department to the Turner team, working with a group of our fellow general contractors on the inaugural Construction Industry Inclusion Week that starts next week. Karen is now focusing her passion and energy on environmental, social, and governance matters, working with several diverse organizations. She offers her years of experience aiding organizations to understand and invest diversity, equity, inclusion, and decarbonizing the environment. She mentors women entrepreneurs working to improve access to early stage capital for diverse leadership teams. She also advises companies who want to transform their business by defining and achieving ambitious sustainability goals. Karen is highly committed to her ongoing engagement with the ADL through the ADL's Board Leadership Institute and as an advocate for anti-bias education and legislation to eradicate hate, bigotry, and bias in all forms. Karen is a leader who has taken a stand to make the workplace inclusive of all people. Karen, I cannot thank you enough for your commitment to social justice, leadership, and especially your friendship. You are making a difference and you have made the construction industry and the workplace a better place to be. Your impact is indispensable, and I thank you for helping us lead our company in the right direction. This is the most important work that we will ever do, and we have achieved a lot because of you. Now it is with great pleasure that I welcome Karen Gould as she accepts ADL's 2021 Burton P. Resnick and Leonard Litwin Legacy Award. Welcome, Karen.
Thank you so much, Peter. And thank you for your inspiration and leadership. I mean, you have been a tremendous friend, role model, and a mentor, and you inspire me and 10,000 people at Turner every day because you have your heart in the right place. I'm really so proud to have been part of your leadership team these past 10 years, and I'm just really honored that you're here with me today. Thank you. Now, I've done many of these presentations before, not this kind, but I don't think I've ever been quite as nervous as I am today. I would like to dedicate this award to my mother, Miriam Stern, who's watching live stream, and who was born on this day, October 12, 1934, in the British Mandate of Palestine. Just a few months prior, her parents, my grandparents, left Germany and landed in the British Mandate of Palestine. Unfortunately and sadly, the rest of that family did not survive in Germany. And it was the beginning of really a very strong connection to the plight of the Jewish people and anti-Semitism for me and for my family. You know, I often heard stories of how my mom grew up during the war for Israel's independence. They were poor, hungry, and scared as bombs flew over her house in Jerusalem. And she was proud to have been part of that first generation of the newly established state of Israel and served in the Israeli Air Force before coming to America as a tourist. Long story short, she married my dad, Bill Stern, in Erie, Indiana, and left all her friends and family in Israel so she could live and raise a family in America, the land of opportunity and peace, while always keeping Israel alive within our home and hearts. Happy birthday, Mom. I love you. I am so humbled to have been selected for the ADL New York, New Jersey's 2021 Burton P. Resnick and Leonard Litwin Legacy Award. This award honors the legacy of Burt Resnick, of Jack Resnick and Sons, and Lenny Litwin of Glenwood Management, who co-founded the Real Estate Committee in 1998 to support ADL's mission. It's a great honor to be included among a group of such esteemed past honorees: Jeff, Donald, Gary, and Carol, who would have been here, but she also was one of the past honorees in response for Lenny Litwin. Thank you for your incredible leadership and all you've done for ADL and our real estate division. I'm proud to work alongside each of you in our fight against hate. To Eugene, Bert, and Lenny, we're thinking of you tonight and miss you. May your memories be a blessing. I am immensely grateful, and I share this honor with Turner Construction, our visionary sponsor, for their leadership and commitment to make construction sites inclusive and free from hate, bias, and bigotry. Without Turner, I would not be here tonight. A very special thanks to the entire Turner team for your support of ADL and your hard work on the front lines to address bias and hate when it occurs. I'm grateful to all our sponsors, our partners, our friends and supporters, to Eric Rudin and Jeff Gorell for your leadership on the Real Estate Executive Committee, and to the committee as a whole for your support. A very special thanks to Chief Galati for the incredibly important work you're leading on the ground to defend our city from violent extremists and terrorists. I also want to acknowledge and thank the many ADL staff for dedicating their time and energy to help Turner Construction. For your outstanding leadership, Regional Director Scott Richmond, and Alex Rosenberg, where he is, Deputy Regional Director, New York, New Jersey. Alex is the man who brought the full breadth and depth of ADL national resources to bear on the challenges in our industry. When Turner decided that bias-motivated graffiti would no longer be tolerated and instead began treating these incidents like a potential crime scene, ADL helped us craft a systematic approach to appropriately respond to all bias-motivated events. For their help with defining our incident response protocols, thank you to the ADL Civil Rights Council and staff. When Turner made a significant investment in anti-racism and anti-bias training at all levels of the company, ADL education experts were there to provide the support and guidance we needed. After the Capitol riots, we received threat intelligence briefings around the inauguration and incident response from the team of experts at ADL Law Enforcement and Analysis and the Center on Extremism. And a big thank you to Aaron Kuchar and Daryl Londono and their teams whose tireless efforts made this unique event in a pandemic into a reality. And last but certainly not least, I want to thank and acknowledge my family for their love and support, those watching from Highland Park, the home of Sigmund Livingston, the founder of ADL. That's Highland Park, Illinois. Sorry, I figured I'm in New Jersey here, in New York. My mom and dad, who connected me physically and spiritually with Israel and the plight of the Jewish people. My brother Avi, my sister Ilana, who has devoted her life and career to eradicating hate and anti-Semitism with the ADL for 17 years and now with the United States Holocaust Memorial Museum. Her husband Mark, who's been involved with the ADL for almost 40 years and is currently serving as a national commissioner. My three boys, Zachary, Jonathan, and Theo, who I'm sure are all studying hard in college today. They are my inspiration to try to leave the world a better place, and I adore them. My New York friends and family who are here with me today to share this special day, and most of all, the love of my life and my best friend, Jeff. Without his support and dedication to our family, our life together, I could not be here today. Thank you. This award is especially meaningful to me, given my work at Turner over the past 18 months to take a stand against racism, hate, and bias in the workplace, and on a deeply personal level, seeing the world through my kids' eyes, like when our community menorah was defaced in our small town bubble of Mendham, New Jersey in December of 2019. And as my kids grew up, I always thought there was more I should do, but I could never find the time, which really means I never made it a priority. Some say that age begets wisdom, but I'm not so sure. I rather feel that age has given me perspective on my priorities. And you gain perspective like the first time you listen to your gut and you don't go out with friends on a Friday night because your body is telling you that you're beat and you should stay home and watch TV and eat a pint of ice cream. And you do it because that's what you really need. And it's not that you can't tell yourself that everything's going to be okay and ignore the need. It's that you don't want to ignore the need. And the next day, that restful evening has fulfilled the need. Well, ADL is here to fulfill a need. It speaks out against injustice because too many good people would rather look the other way. Many good people doubt their ability to make a difference so they walk by and try to ignore the need. But by being here tonight, you have said, there is a way I can help. I can contribute my time and my resources to saying no to injustice. And I thank you all for that. This award also comes at a critical moment in time as I am deeply concerned about the escalation in anti-Semitism across the globe. I believe that anti-Semitism is the driving force of dangerous extremist ideologies and conspiracy theories. I have seen the swastikas etched or painted on a wall of a construction job site, and they're often accompanied by racist, sexist, or homophobic slurs and images. We all saw evidence of this type of thinking at the Unite the Right rally in Charlottesville, Virginia, and the Capitol riots this year, where Nazi and Confederate flags were flown together, not to mention the t-shirts and posters and horrendous slogans that I will not repeat here. We also know that from many studies, including ADL's 2014 global survey, that anti-Semitism is rampant among many countries in the Middle East, despite recently negotiated peace treaties with Israel based on the Abraham Accords. And this is a region where women are also marginalized. Anti-Semitism is a serious human rights issue, which is not limited to the Jewish people individually or collectively. It's perpetuated by a belief system that all people are separated into groups, that there's an us and a them, rather than understanding the truth that we're all connected with each other and with our planet. I look forward to continuing to support my colleagues at ADL in their vital work of fighting hate for good. And it's my ardent hope that Turner's partnership with ADL will carry on in the future to achieve long-lasting positive change in the industry. This is a marathon, not a sprint. And there's much more work to be done. Going forward, I feel a deep sense of responsibility to help the people and communities that I work with understand the value of diversity, equity, and inclusivity, and find the courage to make the changes needed for our world to thrive. I believe as a society we have tough years ahead of us and a lot of work to do, but I'm optimistic. When someone or something is sick, we need to understand the source of the disease before we can heal the body. And I do see a growing awareness and understanding because the spotlight is now shining brightly on the symptoms that cause parts of our society to hide in the shadows, as Fred said so nicely. I'm also grateful to those shadows because they only exist in the presence of light. And that's why I am so proud to be part of the ADL family community who shine the spotlight where it's needed most. As you can see, ADL's mission is more important than ever. And that's why I'm pledging to personally match up to $10,000 in contributions made this evening. With your support, we can help ensure that ADL is always there to provide their vital work and programs, whether it be anti-bias education in the schools and workplaces, civil rights advocacy, or incident response in our local communities. If you haven't already done so, I encourage you to fill out the pledge card available at your seat and make a gift that's meaningful to you. And know tonight that your contribution will have double the impact. If you have any questions, the ADL staff is available to help however they can. Thank you all so much for being here tonight and for your partnership and for your support. It means so much to me. And again, my sincerest gratitude and thanks to the ADL for this prestigious honor.
Amazing. Congratulations, Karen. And thank you for your commitment to fighting injustice wherever it exists. We did it, guys. In-person event. It was amazing, so we're very excited. So Karen, you're right. We all have the power to change our world for the better. And ADL is fortunate to have your leadership and support in that effort. Please allow me to introduce myself. My name is Heidi Packer-Ashkenazi, and I have the pleasure of serving as ADL New York, New Jersey Regional Board Chair. As you've heard throughout this evening, this organization works tirelessly to serve as an advocate for respect and inclusivity and combat bias and bigotry wherever it exists. But this work takes all of us. Your contributions help ADL confront dangerously divisive times with bold new projects, partnerships, and technological innovations. Everything ADL does, from anti-bias education, civil rights advocacy, law enforcement trainings, and incident response, is strengthened by the generosity and commitment of partners like you. If you've not done so already, I strongly encourage you to invest in ADL. You can do so by giving your time, your expertise, or by making a financial commitment that's meaningful to you. As Karen shared, however you choose to stand up to injustice, know your contribution is greatly appreciated and your support makes a difference. Thank you for being an ally at this critical time. I look forward to seeing the impact your contributions have on our joint efforts to stem the rising tide of anti-Semitism and hate. Please join me in enjoying dessert and get home safe. Thank you again for your support. Have a wonderful evening.